There are a couple of key supplements that I like to be looking at for an individual when we are thinking about helping to manage some of the common symptoms that we find in perimenopause. So we talked last episode around things like hot flashes and mood disturbances and sleep and weight gain. And for me, the biggest thing that I want to be addressing with supplements, in addition to an already established routine, is going to be stress management. And so for that reason, there are several that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to start with Vitex, or chasteberry is another way that it is often referred to. And Vitex, I love this supplement for a myriad of reasons, not just for a perimenopausal woman, but particularly for women with PCOS or who run androgen dominant. And it appears in terms of the mechanism of action that Vitex appears to affect the pituitary gland in its ability to produce luteinizing hormone, which is the hormone that triggers ovulation, essentially. I often call luteinizing hormone, the uncle that comes in at the end of a, celebratory meal. Everyone's finished, it's Christmas, and he comes in late, everyone's already eaten, and he'll come in and sort of whack you on the back and be like, "Hey kid, what's up?" And then I'm thinking about a particular uncle that does this all the time. And, there was one time where I kind of spit out my food, which is essentially what's happening at the level of the follicle, right? We have this luteinizing hormone surge, which is going to trigger the release of the egg from the follicle. That's ovulation. And then, of course, the development of the corpus luteum. So Vitex is great because of that mechanism of action. And then it also appears to increase progesterone and balance testosterone. So this is one of the reasons why I like it for women with PCOS. And of course, PCOS follows you into perimenopause. And progesterone is one of the diminishing sex hormones that we actually see in perimenopause, at least starting in that mid-30s, as I was just mentioning. And what often happens is women who, and we were talking a little bit about this last time, but women who traditionally would say things like, "I could handle all sorts of stress. I could handle the kids misbehaving and the career and the husband and the aging parents." When we reach our 40s, where we've had a couple of steady years of progesterone decline, it seems like there's a critical level that is hit where most women are now just unable to do so, right? They are just, everything irritates them. The cupboard could not be closed in a certain way, and that can set them off. So I like Vitex because of its progesterone balancing, testosterone balancing effects. It also helps with ovulation, which is really going to be important for my PCOS patients or PCOS ladies as well. It also does a couple other things. It binds to dopamine receptors, which is also going to lower prolactin. So prolactin, when it's too high, it can stop the ovaries from producing estrogen, right? Which also can now contribute to irregular periods and vaginal dryness and low libido and all the things. So the lowering of the prolactin can also help alleviate some of the symptoms of PMS. And last time we talked about the different stages of perimenopause, with the earlier stages looking like you're running estrogen dominant because of those that decreasing progesterone. So this is one of my kind of favorites, if you will. Overall, it's like my all-around favorite, right? Because it's going to help with testosterone, estrogen, progesterone levels. And just to be clear, Vitex in and of itself is not a hormone, but it's just rather kind of stimulating some of these mechanisms of actions that can naturally help to balance some of these symptoms. So a typical dose is somewhere around 100 to 200 milligrams by mouth. Depending on the severity, I might increase that. And there are certainly supplement companies I've seen as high as 600 milligrams per capsule. So I would say most women in their 40s are going to benefit from a daily dose of somewhere between 100 and 200 milligrams by mouth, but certainly be working with your PCP, your primary healthcare provider, in order to determine what the best plan of action is for you. And the other thing that I'll say, just in terms of symptom alleviation, which another reason why I love it is it looks like Vitex can also help ameliorate the night sweats, the anxiety, and the hot flashes. So if you're somebody who, let's say, is in her mid 40s, late 40s, early 50s, there's lots of stress on your plate and you're noticing that your sleep is really starting to be affected, which of course is going to affect a whole host of other things. Inefficient partitioning of fuel, focus and clarity the next day, muscle gain, weight loss, all the things. Taking Vitex is going to help with that. So it's going to help decrease the night sweats. It's going to help decrease the hot flashes, maybe that you're experiencing overnight, and then the overall anxiety as well. Big fan. Huge. If you've ever seen the movie Pretty Woman, you'll get that little big mistake, huge mistake. This is not a mistake. That's my poor imitation of Julia Roberts in that scene. Okay. I bet I'm the only person that gets that reference. And please, if you get it, please leave it in the comments. Let me know that my humor is not just hilarious to me. Another supplement that I love for stress management is rhodiola rosacea. This is, it's an adaptogen, and I'm going to be talking about a couple of adaptogens today, but an adaptogen basically means that it sort of adapts to whatever it is that you need. So rhodiola can increase your energy, which a lot of perimenopausal women sort of feel like they've fallen flat on. It can improve your mental and your physical stamina. So your ability to focus and concentrate on a Zoom meeting or, at the gym, rhodiola is going to certainly help with that. And it's also very, very important for resilience. And we'll call it cellular grit as it relates to stress. So rhodiola is kind of like she's sort of like the multitasker. She can do almost anything, and that's because she is an adaptogen. So if you don't have enough energy, she will help you produce more. If you have too much anxiety, she's going to help you reduce. And of course, rhodiola is a woman in this example. I mean, what else could she be? She's going to help reduce. She's going to help reduce anxiety if you have too much of it. If you are depressed, she is going to elevate and rev up the system, because depression is not just a mental state; it is a physical state as well. So with depressed patients, we will see, let's say, a decline in mental acuity and emotional health and happiness. But we also actually see a depression in gut motility. We see a depression in acid in the stomach to digest your food. So everything is lowered. Everything is kind of depressed. So taking rhodiola rosacea will help with depression and rev up the system. It will help support adrenal function. This is something that is so incredibly important for a woman in perimenopause, because one of the things that we have to understand is that the ovaries are now starting to, we'll call it, retire. Okay, so they are no longer producing the amount of sex hormones that they once were, or over the course of their life. And the adrenals are going to be taking over much of that role in menopause. So we also want to be thinking about fortifying and nourishing the adrenal glands, which are these sort of triangular shaped glands that sit atop of the kidney. And they are certainly involved in the stress response, chronic and acute. And I've talked about this in my book. There's a difference between, distress and eustress, like bad stress and good stress. But we certainly want to be thinking about in our 40s to be managing stress so that, or the distress, let's say, chronic low-grade inflammation and stress, such that we are nourishing, let's say, among many other organs, but particularly of focus here is the adrenal glands, because once they take over sex hormone production, if they have just been lambasted for, whatever it is, 30, 40 years, the transition to menopause will be more difficult. I often find that women with chronic stress have a harder time with menopause. There's more symptoms that we're dealing with. And the capacity of the glands to now produce these sex hormones is also going to be attenuated. Rhodiola has also been shown to help with brain health, particularly brain fog and focus. So a lot of women, again, in their 40s are like, I've walked into this room and I don't know why, right? Or I'm sitting on a Zoom meeting and I have no idea what the past 5 minutes, what everyone's been talking about because I've zoned out somewhere. Can help with weight loss as well, generally. Help with athletic performance, as I mentioned, and it does a whole bunch of other things we won't get into, but very high level, can help reduce blood pressure, help with immune function, etc. So I really do love rhodiola as a supplement. I typically like to recommend taking it in the evening, and I feel like that helps with. I feel that helps with the quality of sleep, which is usually a focus of concern for my ladies in perimenopause. All right, let's talk a little bit about let's talk about ashwagandha, and then I want to talk about phosphatidylserine. Ashwagandha, like rhodiola rosacea, is also an adaptogen, so it kind of can adapt to whatever it is that we need. So it can either rev up the system or calm it down. Ashwagandha, very well known for its building, again, that cellular grit and that resilience to the demands in our life. And like rhodiola, I do like to recommend often taking this in the evening as we are winding down for bed. I also actually like it shortly after a workout session. So I do like maybe an hour to 2 hours after a workout session. Sometimes I'll have some ashwagandha as well. So what does it do? Well, one of the biggest things that it does is it helps with sleep. Seems as though ashwagandha taken before bed can help with sleep quality, as well as latency, which is the time that it takes for someone to fall asleep. So ladies who are feeling like that tired and wired, where you're getting in bed and you're like, okay, I'm going to get to bed. And then like your mind is racing, or you have this random question that, pops up into your head, and then it's like you're lying in bed, it's quiet, you've made the room cold and you have blackout blinds and you're doing all the things. And then, suddenly there's a thought that pops into your head that's like, why do noses run and feet smell? Right? Or some random question. I mean, I may or may not be speaking from experience and like some of these questions that pop up into my own mind at night, but certainly is going to help with latency in terms of your ability to fall asleep. Also generally with insomnia. So the women who are listening who wake up between those witching hours of 2 and 4 in the morning, and also helping to reduce morning sort of lethargy and anxiety that can happen as well. So absolutely love ashwagandha as well. It's a wonderful adaptogen. The last one I'll mention is phosphatidylserine. This is a phospholipid, so it's basically helps to maintain cell membranes, which is really important for, I don't know how technical we can get today, but basically helps with cellular health, helps with cellular communication, helps with the integrity of the cell in and of itself. Seems like phosphatidylserine does help with sleep, particularly those of us who have sleep-related difficulties that are related to stress and that have potentially elevated cortisol levels in the evening. So very briefly, cortisol is not the devil that it's often made out to be online. We actually do need cortisol, but when we want it in the morning. So and there's something called there's a circadian rhythm to cortisol. We have something called the cortisol awakening response, which is just what it sounds like. Your cortisol is being secreted in higher and higher amounts in the early hours of the morning, and that is a part of that is a function of getting us up in the morning and getting things going. It is also very important for immune system. And when your cortisol levels are high, cortisol will almost act like a general and kind of go along the line of all the immune cells and kind of check them out and see which ones are the ones that we want and which ones are the ones that we don't want. So often with autoimmune patients, we create auto antibodies, right? So we create these antibodies that are directed at the self. And so when we have high cortisol levels in the morning, which is healthy and normal and what we want, there's something called central tolerance that happens. So I often think about it like cortisol is almost like the sergeant running down the line to see which soldiers are out of line and can pick out the autoantibodies from the line and say, you guys, get out of here, right? For a lot of our autoimmune, at least autoimmune patients that I've counseled, it seems like that cortisol awakening response is often blunted. So we don't have a high enough amount of cortisol in the morning. And so a lot of, I'll say Hashimoto's patients with MS, patients with lupus, they feel, or any autoimmune condition truly, but these are the ones that I often work with the most. I'll say also to a lesser degree some of the arthritides as well. So like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis. What you'll find in these conditions is a general achiness and swelling in the morning. Joints are hurting, face feels puffy, everything feels puffy, and that's because the cortisol levels are not high enough. So all that to say, that we have in a normal response, we have high cortisol levels in the morning, and then it sort of falls off of a ski slope, right? So imagine you're going down a black diamond hill. Cortisol should follow that over the course of the day, such that when we get to the evening, there's not much cortisol left. And we actually require that in order to fall asleep. We need low cortisol levels, and there's a whole host of other hormones that are beyond, there's adenosine and there's melatonin and there's all these other, there's sort of a coordinated dance that happens in order for the sleep cycle to begin. But one of the requirements there is a decrease in cortisol. And so phosphatidylserine, coming back to this original point, for some individuals, there is either a overall blunt in the cortisol output, or we have a reverse cortisol curve, meaning that their cortisol levels are low in the morning, but then as the day goes on, their cortisol levels creep up higher and higher and higher. And so that might be the mom picking up her kids at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, who's just very stressed for the rest of the evening, is not able to wind down. That might be the jarring email or jarring news that comes late in the day, or a stressor that comes late in the day. You might also be working out too late in the day as well, which drives up cortisol too. Phosphatidylserine helps to counter that. So I like phosphatidylserine in general, and there is a product, I've talked about it on a couple of where I've been a guest, and I'll share it here on my own show. No affiliation with them, but there is a product called Cortisol Manager. And I believe the brand is Integrative Therapeutics. I'll find the link and I'll put it in the show notes for you. You can buy it off of Amazon as well. They combine all of the things that we have just talked about, save for the Vitex. So there's ashwagandha, there's phosphatidylserine, there's rhodiola. So there's all of these things bundled up into one product. And they have a whole bunch of other products in their range, but I do believe that this is kind of like this is their show pony. This is like their number one bestseller. It's a great product.